Steelix is maybe the most solid single Pokemon card in this format, with the ability to attach metal energy to it and benefit from those, make it extremely hard to knock out. Plus, it's got a very solid attack that can deal consistent damage every turn. So it's natural to pair that with an up-and-coming archetype in this format called NocLock, in which you use Noctowl. You want to get 4 of them onto your bench, that way you could possibly discard up to 4 trainers out of your opponent's hand every turn, forcing them to shuffle them back into their deck. And that's pretty much the deck. The Steelix parts of this deck actually run like any other Steelix deck, and the NocLock part of it pretty much just means that you're going to have Noctowls on your bench. So of course we'll start out with a full playset of Onyx from Neo Genesis and a full playset of Steelix. Like other Steelix decks, you really only want to attach 1 metal energy per Steelix, at the most 2. With this deck, because your setup is kind of stalling out your opponent, you're making it so they can't utilize trainers, you can get by with more heavy loading on Steelix. So you could manage to put a couple on them at a time, especially since you have energy charge to get them back. And that's going to make Steelix more of a tank. It's going to be really hard for your opponent to knock it out if they can't get their evolution cards and set up fast enough because of Noctowl. So Noctowl's Pokemon power lets you flip a coin once per turn. And if it's heads, you can look at your opponent's hand. If there's a trainer there, it goes back into their deck. So if you've got 4 Noctowl, you can do this 4 times and potentially take all of the trainers out of their hands. Cleffa, ironically, since we have it in this deck, is also going to be the main counter to this deck, in that Eek can replenish your opponent's hand and they can get those trainers back very easily. But what this is going to do is force them to rely on Cleffa. And if your Steelix is already set up and you're tail crushing it every single turn, odds are you're going to be able to knock out their Cleffas even before they can get those trainers back and use them fast enough that they're not going to get taken out of their hand. Rocket Sneak Attack is going to be your backup for a very early game before you have all of the Noctowls on your bench. Or if you just flip 4 tails, you still have the backup of Rocket Sneak Attack to get those trainer cards out of your opponent's hand back into their deck so that they can't use them. Energy Charge, again, to get those metal energies back out of your discard after you lose them. This format doesn't have a lot of energy discard, but the one coming up does. So carrying this Steelix deck or a NocLock archetype into the next format, it's going to be very similar, but you're going to have to use those energy charges a lot more because you have things like Dark Feraligatr that could discard energy. Good Manners is a solid card just as a search utility. It's going to get those Onyx and those Hoot Hoots out of your deck so they can get on your bench and get your setup a lot quicker. Double Gust will help deal with the Cleffas that your opponent's going to have to rely on in order to get those consistent hands. And Professor Elm's basically going to be your alternative Cleffa that's going to help you replenish your hand and get all of the trainers that you need. So unless you're up against another NocLock, you should be safe holding on to a lot of this stuff in your hand, using them when needed. And that's why NocLock can be so annoying to play against, is you want to hold on to these cards, but you're forcing your opponent to either play them or lose them that turn, which can put them in a really bad spot. Only 2 copies of Focus Band in this deck, and those are mainly going to be for the Cleffas, just so your opponent's going to have to flip 2 coins to try to knock one out. If you need to use Eek over and over again, you're able to. For Steelix, I much prefer Goldberry. Once you've already got a metal energy on Steelix, it's not going to be taking that much damage every turn, especially very early in the game. That's why I like to put a Goldberry on there. And unless Steelix is getting a one-hit KO, which is going to be very rare, only against things like Feraligatr or Typhlosion is this going to happen. But even then, the damage is going to be a lot less, so Goldberry is a lot more effective in just healing off that damage over and over as much as you need. Bill's Teleporter is really just a personal decision for this deck. I really like the amount of draw you can get out of it, even if it's not consistent. This is really going to help you fill out your hand with Steelix and Noctowls very early in the game. There are a lot of other cards that you could tech into this deck and replace with Bill's Teleporter, but I really just like having that draw power there. For me, I would rather get the Noctowls on the bench as fast as possible and really get the NocLock going, instead of filling my hand with other cards or using different cards for different strategies with the deck, which I'll get into in a bit. Be running 4 metal energy for this deck and 4 full heal energy. The full heal energy is going to help deal with special conditions, while recycle energy makes it so that you have a steady flow of those colorless energy in your hand. And I said there were certain cards you could put in this deck instead of Bill's Teleporter that could come in really handy. The biggest of which is probably Recall. With Recall, you can get access to Onyx's Rage attack, which late game, whatever damage you have on you that hasn't been healed off with Goldberry can come in really handy for dealing a huge chunk of damage to your opponent before you get knocked out. Another handy strategy you can use with this is, even if Steelix has a lot of damage counters on it, you can still attach Goldberry and use Recall for that Rage, and then those damage counters will actually disappear as soon as you're done attacking and your turn ends. The other big card is Erica's Kindness, which before this format didn't really have much of a use, but now Pichu is a huge threat to this deck. Pichu can deal tons of damage to Noctiles without you having anything you can do about it, but Erica's Kindness lets you get around that. It's going to be healing off that 20 damage every turn for as long as the Pichus are dealing it with their Zap attack. So this will give you time to either double gust the Pichus back to the bench, or find some way to knock them out before it knocks out 4 Noctiles in one turn. And if you want to continue to step up the healing game, or if you're more worried about healing off small amounts of damage than you are special conditions being afflicted on Steelix, then Potion Energy is another great replacement for full heal energy. As always, let me know what you think about this deck, and let me know what kinds of decks you would like to see in the future. Bye.